Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. So I think we are just waiting on Assistant Director
Can you hear
Violin.
me? I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you. Hi.
Okay. Lasanya, how are you?
How are you?
Good, good.
Hi, Dr. Anderson. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Okay, that was me. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you all.
All good. All right, so I think we are just waiting on Dr. Adams and Assistant Director Violin. I see our first interview is here. So once we get them on, we'll get started in the next couple minutes.
All right.
We'll give it about one more minute for Dr. Adams, but I want to make sure we stay on schedule. So um, we'll give it about one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, looks like we're all in here. Let's get Benito in here.
Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We are continuing with interviews for Community Police Commission. As everyone knows, we have 9 vacancies that will be that we're looking to fill for this coming December. So we started interviewing candidates on Tuesday. We're continuing interviews today and more on Monday as we continue through this process. So we are starting today. Our first interview is Shandra Benito, who's a current commissioner who is seeking reappointment. So before we get started, we know each other, but again, for the record, I'm Delonte Thomas, Chief Ethics Officer for the City of Cleveland. And then I'll ask each of my co-panelists to introduce themselves, and then we will jump right in.
Hi, I'm Chris Vineland. I'm currently an Assistant Director in the Department of Public Safety.
Dr. Lee Anderson, Executive Director of the Police Accountability Team.
Latanya Goldsby, President and co-founder of Black Lives Matter Cleveland and President of Citizens for a Safer Cleveland, directly impacted family member.
And I'm John Adams, current commissioner. Hi, Shandra.
All right. So Ms. Benito, why don't we get started? Why don't you just, I guess, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are interested in reappointment to the commission.
Yeah, just for those who maybe, I know that we also know each other, but for anyone who might be watching, my name is Shandra Maura Benito. I got married last year, so that's why my last name is a little different. And I am a current commissioner on the CPC, and I think just some of the important things to know about me is that I'm a social worker. I'm a licensed social worker. I've worked in domestic violence work, sexual assault work with people with disabilities. I've also been a therapist, and I've worked in macro level social work as a director of diversity and inclusion, as an executive director of a nonprofit, and then also currently as a director of human resources at a clinic in the east side of Cleveland. So I feel like my kind of path to this work has both been professional, just from my experience working with impacted communities, and then also personal. I'm a person with a disability and hard of hearing. My first language was American Sign Language, and I've done a lot of work around disability advocacy and organizing within the cross disability community, and that was really how I first started getting involved in police reform work, because people with disabilities are impacted by police violence and police misconduct at a higher level. So yeah, and why I am interested in reappointment is I believe that I still have work to do on the commission, and I believe that the skill set that I have and the experience that I have can still be of service to the commission, and so I want to keep going.
No, good. Thank you. And I think that's it. I think that leads us perfectly into kind of my first question, which is, I guess, if you could talk a little bit more or expound on your skills and experiences, both in whether professional capacity, community capacity, or even with respect to, your work on the commission thus far, and speak to kind of how or why that may qualify you for appointment, or why you should be reappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kind of break it down into a few different sections, but one is, I think, just my personal and professional experience. So I really became interested because of my work and my identity as a person with a disability, and in just working with homeless folks and working with people who were survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, and my interactions with police in different settings, going from being a social worker, working with police on, different issues and cases, and seeing how, they treat me in that context. And then also when being at protests or, advocating for somebody when the police disagree with me, and seeing how I would be treated in that context, really drew me to police reform work. But also, I think having a social work background and having worked with so many different communities, I think gives me a lot of knowledge and expertise, especially in the realm of crisis intervention, police work with youth, and mental health. And so, one of the big things that we have talked about in our consent decree and in some of our work is how police respond to people experiencing mental illness. And so I think that my experience as a social worker gives me expertise to be able to lend to that. Just in terms of in my current work on the commission, I started a crisis intervention and behavioral health work group. And I also was able to provide expertise in a number of GPOs because of that experience that I have. So one is we're currently working on a handcuffing GPO. One of the things that I brought to that was best practices around handcuffing deaf and hard of hearing individuals, because people use their hands to communicate, and if they're cuffed from the back, then they can't communicate. So I think that, someone who might not have had my lived experience and professional experience might have missed that in a GPO. Or I also helped make changes to our traumatic incident reporting GPO, and a number of other GPOs that I feel like my kind of professional and personal experience has explicitly allowed me to see things that maybe other people might not. So I think that is one. The second is the work that I have done on the commission as someone who's really tried to build bridges and listen to all people. I think that kind of part of who I am is somebody who tries to listen to everybody and make space for everybody, and bring us together. And I think that that is an important thing to have on the commission. Especially, it's very challenging to have 13 people trying to make cohesive, collected decisions. And so I think the more people that you have who are good at listening to people, who care about people individually, who care about other people's experience on the commission, I think makes a big difference, and the ability to connect with people from a range of different backgrounds. The other thing that I think that I bring to the commission is I'm a really hard worker. I have been somebody who has really tried to dig into the work, and in all, I've served on over 5 committees, 2 work groups. I was the MRAC mental health Response Advisory Committee as a CPC liaison. And so I've just been somebody who was always willing to jump in and do the work. And I think that my commitment to that has made me valuable to the commission, and consistency. I just missed my first full commission meeting last week in my 2 years serving. And so I have one of the strongest attendance records. So I've tried really hard to be someone who's present and dedicates a lot of time. And I think the last thing that I bring to the commission, besides just the kind of dedication and time, is just being willing to jump in and help out. So in addition to the number of committees and work groups and things that I've served on, I've also been somebody who, whenever there was a call for, can you help with this event, or can you help, when we were doing our grant applications, they asked commissioners that were not on the Budget and Grants Committee if they could jump in and help review applications. And I did that. I did the same with the Inspector General application review recently. And so, I am somebody who tries to be a team player and tries to help out people whenever I can. And I think that's also an important asset for the commission.
No, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Feel free to jump in.
So I just want to follow up. Thank you for your past service, in case nobody says that enough. But because you are a sitting commissioner, I'm going to follow up with this. How do you see the results that the CPC may already have had impacting policing in the city of Cleveland?
That's a great question. So I think that really looking at our first 2 years, it was a big undertaking to try to form the foundation of our work. So we were coming in, and even though the CPC had existed and we were standing on the shoulders of all the great work that previous CPC staff and previous commissioners and community members had done prior to us being seated, with the new powers that the charter granted us, we had a lot of new procedures to develop, new rules to develop, relationships to develop. And, I think that has been the most important thing that we have done. There's, specific GPOs that I could point to, and training and events that we've done that I do believe have made a difference. But I think the biggest thing that we have done was creating the rules, starting, developing those relationships with the police accountability team, relationships with different commanders in the policy unit, in compliance unit, in training. And creating those open channels of communication and those relationships, I think, has been the most important thing, because I know for me, and I think that for many other commissioners, the goal is to be able to create cultural change and policy change and systemic change in collaboration wherever possible. And so I think that building those relationships and building that structure has been the most important thing. I think the other thing that I would say is that, there have been changes that we've made policy-wise in terms of ensuring that policies come through the CPC that I think have been positive changes. And there are things that are, like, if you aren't reading the GPOs, you might not know about it. But I think that there's real concrete changes that have been made through some of the policy decisions, whether that was strengthening citizen protections and ShotSpotter GPO is one example. And so I believe that those are some of the biggest things that we've done. But if I'm being totally honest, I think that there were a lot of missed opportunities for us to do more. And I think that a lot of the frustration from different people, especially our community members, is completely warranted. And, it is my hope that with a second term that I could help us do better.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
Thank you.
So I have a question, Ms. Benito. You spoke about your work that you did as a commissioner, as your time being appointed. As a reappointment to the commission, can you explain to us what has been some of the most challenging things that you all, in some of the areas that you all have had to deal with? And what areas do you think you might need more support in?
Yeah. I think the most challenging pieces have been kind of some of those foundational pieces. I think that a couple things was, I think that we would have benefited for like having a retreat or having some time, intentional time together before we were appointed. We had our first meeting in January. The first time we all met was we were all appointed, and so therefore everything needed to be public as it should. We want it to be transparent, but there's also a lot of relationship building that needs to happen, and I think additional training that would have been helpful for us to have before starting our like official business. One of the things, knowing how to conduct the meetings, knowing some of the basic information before we're immediately trying to make decisions publicly was really challenging. And so I think that while we got some great training after we were seated, I think that we could have had a better process, and that I think could have helped prepare us better and helped us start stronger. I think some of the disruptions on the commission, and I just say personally, I've endured a lot of personal attacks. And there's some pending investigations, but just made it really, really hard to be a commissioner. I really tried for 2 years to do everything I could to stay invested and stay the course. And also, I think we saw a lot of commissioners get really burnt out by the constant conflict, by the constant disruptions, and the constant attacks. And so I think that there are some really excellent people, staff and commissioners, that we have lost or are losing because of that. And so I'm really glad that that we do have so many spots, and that so far it sounds like we have some really great people who are being considered, and so I'm hopeful for what that might mean for the future. But I think that and then the other thing is, I think that we've really started to hit more of a stride with our interactions with CDP and the city and the law department. But, there were some contentious moments where it came to records and how, what does that collaboration look like? And I'm thankful that the DOJ and Judge Oliver has been really supportive, and the monitoring team has been supportive. And I'm hopeful for that would be different moving forward. But, at the end of the day, I think it's easy to point to a few things and say it was this person's fault or it's that person's fault. But at the end of the day, we're all responsible for the dynamics that are created. And so I, think that we all have some responsibility to bear there.
So, hi, Coach Benito. I have a question. So first of all, that is commendable on your attendance record. I think that's great. I just want to note that being present is the first part. And so my question really has to do with the consent decree and the commission's responsibilities under the decree. How do you see those, the charter, the decree, and just sort of the foundational pieces that you talked about within the commission? How do you see them all working together if you were to have a second term?
Absolutely. I see it all working together in a few different ways. So I think that one is, as named body in the consent decree, we have responsibilities under the consent decree that we need to make sure that we're doing the things that the consent decree lays out for us. And we need to make sure that we are in compliance. That is a foundational thing that we have to do. The other piece is, I see the CPC's role as, it's our job to also help the city to come into compliance with the consent decree. So, I see that we're a body of 13 people and additional staff that should be a resource for the city also. Everything that we're doing also helps move the the city of Cleveland into compliance with the consent decree. The other piece of how I believe it all works together is that I see the consent decree as the floor, not the ceiling for police reform in Cleveland. And so I do think that that's one thing that, not to say that other members of the city or other city bodies only want to meet the consent decree. But I think that the CPC also is looking at not just what will move us out of the consent decree, but what will lead to constitutional, community-oriented policing in the city of Cleveland. And my belief is that when we are making those changes, even if they go beyond the consent decree, or even if it's not explicitly named in the consent decree, that the more we do that, the more we will come into compliance with the consent decree. So I see that we are both responsible to the consent decree, responsible for helping us move out of the consent decree. But I also believe that the CPC is charged with moving us beyond the consent decree. Because when the consent decree ends, which it eventually will, we want to make sure that that those changes are sustainable, and also that we never find ourselves in a similar situation with the loss of life, with the injustices that led us to being in the consent decree. So I see it working together very intertwined. And I think that it's also really important for us to, remember, I think there's been some things that have come up in rules that we're trying to pass, or, for example, the evidentiary manual that we're currently working on feedback from the DOJ with. I think some people are at sometimes confused that we have to put this stuff through the Department of Justice. Well, we are just as liable for what we create, making sure that it protects the rights of officers, that it is best practice, the same way that the DOJ is monitoring other policies and procedures that come out of the city, that we also have to go through that process, and then we're responsible for it.
Thank you.
So I want to follow up, if I could. Most of the things that you've described in your current work have to do with process, policy, training, things like that. And I know that the CPC is moving rapidly forward into the review of discipline. And so knowing that that's going to be new or a more new thing that the CPC is going to be taking on, if you would describe for us your thoughts and opinions about your ability to withhold judgment during an allegation of misconduct until all the available facts have been presented and everything is in front of the CPC for review.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just also to describe some of my work around accountability, I'm on the accountability committee and was chair pro tem of that committee for a while. And I also have been working with the policy committee as a member of the policy committee, working on the corrective action guidance, which is the kind of making changes to the policy that guides accountability and guides discipline. And so I have really been steeped into the accountability work and have learned a lot in that area. And it's one of the areas that I'm most interested in continuing in a second term. In terms of being able to withhold judgment, absolutely. I think that when thinking about some of the cases that we might start to hear, I think that is extremely serious, that we're talking about somebody's career that's on the line, somebody's livelihood, their ability to support their family. I understand that for an officer coming in front of the CPC, that would be very challenging and stressful. And I think that there's probably a lot of officers who are worried about what that's going to look like. Are people going to, be coming in with preconceived notions, and they're not going to get a fair evaluation and a fair adjudication? So, and I think that police officers have a stressful job and a job that deals with a lot of trauma. And I could just really empathize with not, knowing that this process is going to start and not having seen it and not having any idea of what it's going to look like would be very challenging. So I empathize with that. I also wholeheartedly believe that it is in the best interest of the police and the community and the impacted people, the people complainants or people involved in these cases, that we withhold judgment. I think that it would be a great disservice to everybody involved if we were to come in with preconceived notions, if we were to make our minds up before all of the evidence was laid out in front of us. And I think that is like worst case scenario. I think that everybody has bias, and it's important for us to know coming in that we might have bias. And so I think that I can't say that I have no bias. That's just not humanly possible. But what we do have to do is actively manage that bias and make sure that we're looking at the facts, looking at the evidence, and being able to check ourselves and frankly check other commissioners to make sure that we're not discussing the cases, outside of public view, that we're not going into thoughts and opinions about the case until all of the evidence has been heard, and also structurally making sure that we have a process that protects officers' rights as well as the rights of the complainant as much as possible. And so I think that I just see that as critical importance, because one of the worst things that could happen for one of the most powerful civilian oversight bodies, and what will, I think, be a test for oversight bodies across the country, it would be such a miscarriage of justice and a shame if we do not get that right and make sure that we protect officers' rights as well.
I have one other question for you. I think as you talk about the challenges that the commission has faced over these last 2 years and kind of the path forward, I guess I'm kind of interested to know, and again, giving the context that the commission is always going to be dealing with hot topic or hot button issues, right? I mean, and sensitive issues, right? That will spark a lot of feeling or emotion or concern or empathy or anger, right? And so there will, inevitably be disagreements and challenges to come. If you were to be appointed to another term, how do you see your role in helping to manage those situations as they come up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're absolutely correct that conflict and disagreement are inevitable. And frankly, disagreement is inevitable. And also different people being mad at us at different times is also inevitable. I think that one of the things that when I first started, and I think this is an area that I've grown in, is I struggled with there's so much complexity in what we're dealing with. There's so many different sides to think about and understand and consider. I think when I first started, I felt a little frozen by that, and that I was so focused on trying to make sure that everyone was heard and that all sides were considered, that I didn't do as good a job in just really kind of making my own decision and standing firm in that. And so I think that one of the most important things to me, and I think that this is something that I've grown in over the last 2 years, and to be more comfortable with saying, I've listened, I've assessed, I've reviewed all of the evidence and all of the material, and this is my position, and this is where I'm coming, and this is what I believe and how I'm moving. That I think it's important for everybody to be able to listen to one another and have compassion with one another, but also understand that at the end of the day, we have to move by how our conscience are telling us and based on the information that we have, and to feel comfortable in that, and to feel comfortable in that we're not always going to agree with one another. We're not always going to agree with the city. We're not always going to agree with the police, and we're not always going to agree with the community. And so I think that trying to stay in that path where we are having compassion and empathy, but also just sticking to what our conscious and unconscious and what the facts tell us is really important. I think that a body of 13 people was created for a specific reason. There's a reason it's not just one or two commissioners, right? It's because we recognize that the 13 of us we're not experts in this. I think that one of the reasons why I really hope to being given a second term is I have learned so much in these last 2 years. I have learned so much about policing, about police policies, understanding the complexity of these issues, how these processes work, how these organizations work. And but no, none of us are experts. We're not experts in these areas. We do this 10 to 15 hours a week, and then we are doing other things the rest of our time. And so I think recognizing that because we're not experts, we all might have slightly different perspective, and it was designed that way. And so it was also designed for us to not always agree. And so I think being respectful of understanding I might have a different perspective, but the rest of the group has made a different decision. And as a commissioner, I back that. And I recognize that that's how it was designed.
Okay. Well, no, thank you. And I think I speak on behalf of all of us, thank you for the thoughtful responses. Anything else from the panel? We are just about, or actually about a minute or so over time. Well, we started about 2 minutes late, so we're just about at time. Anything else from the panel? Okay, seeing none. So again, as I started, we're continuing through the interview process. Once we have conducted or finished interviews, this group will come together and ultimately give some recommendations to the mayor. The mayor will ultimately make the final decision on who he plans to nominate for appointment. Those names will then be turned over to City Council with the expectation that all goes well. New commissioners will be sworn in December. So that's kind of the timeline that we're on now, and we'll be sure to be in touch as we continue through the process. But if you have any other questions or concerns about the process, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to answer those questions for you. But that said, anything that we didn't ask you that you want to share or that you like us to consider kind of as a final word?
Yes. Well, one is I wasn't asked about meeting the categories of the charter. And so I just wanted to I think I may have kind of like woven that in a little bit, but I just kind of wanted to answer that just so that you have the information. I think that some of the categories that I meet, being a person with a disability and also having experience with mental illness myself. I'm someone who has anxiety, clinical anxiety, take medication and do therapy, and then also being hard of hearing. And then working with people with disabilities and people experiencing mental illness and homelessness and some of the other categories covered there. Also, I am Latina. I am white and also Latina. And am my has been very involved in the Latino community. My husband is from Honduras, and have spent a lot of time with folks who are undocumented. And immigrant and refugee community. So I think those are some of the categories that I meet, just in case you guys need that information. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is thank you. I was so honored to have been chosen the first time. I have learned so much and I have grown so much because of the honor of being on the commission. And while I absolutely hope to get a second term, if I do not, I will leave grateful for the opportunity and the experience. And I'm grateful for the work that all of you are doing in selecting the next round of commissioners.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we will be in touch. But thank you again for taking the time to meet with us.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we will keep moving along. I think our next interview, Quenton Jordan is here. Let's get Quenton in. All right. Quenton, are you there? Maybe, maybe not.
He shows as muted.
Looks like he's able to click the link to be, or accepted the link to join as a panelist. But
Can you hear me now?
yes, we can
Okay.
hear you. Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah, let's see here. Okay. Can you see me now?
Nope.
Okay, hold on 1 second here. Having some technical difficulties here.
All good. There we go.
Am I on?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, great. Okay, I was starting to sweat a little bit. So
Nope, all good, all good. Well, listen, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. My name is Delonte Thomas. I am the Chief Ethics Officer for the City of Cleveland, and essentially serving as liaison for the mayor and the selection process for the new community, or for the Community Police Commission. As you may know, we have 9 seats that will be vacant in December. And so, so this is kind of the first step in the process for filling those seats. And so, before we jump in, I'll ask each of my co-panelists to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Chris Weiland. I'm currently an assistant director in the Department of Public Safety here at the City of Cleveland.
Greetings, my name is Dr. Lee Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Police Accountability Team here for the City of Cleveland, everything with the consent decree compliance.
I'm John Adams. I'm a current co-chair of the Police Commission. Welcome.
My name is Latanya Goldsby, President of Black Lives Matter Cleveland, Citizens for a Safer Cleveland, directly impacted family member. Nice to meet you.
All right. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in joining the CPC.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little bit about myself is I have over 25 years of law enforcement experience, dating back to was that 1996, 97. I started off my career in law enforcement and at Cuyahoga Community College. I went on and worked at the Cleveland Metro Parks. Then we were Rangers. Then they have since changed their name to police. And I went back to actually Tri-C, and I supervised the Eastern Campus police officers there, and went on to end my career at RTA. During that time period, I came into law enforcement with a bachelor's degree from the University of Toledo in criminal justice, and then later receiving my master's in management, science of management from Indiana Wesleyan University right here in Independence. So during that time as well, I rose from the ranks of being a detective all the way through. During the detective time, I received my master investigator certificate from the state of Ohio. I also received numerous of trainings and investigations. Then I also was promoted several times from that, from the sergeant all the way up to commander. And now I spend my time as a retired officer, and I work as a security specialist for Cleveland Cliffs. So I have two kids. They both are grown and halfway out the house. So I'm doing pretty good right now.
All right. So maybe you tell us a little bit now about why specifically you're interested in serving on the Community Police Commission, and with that, I guess if you can tell us a little bit about what skills, experiences that qualify you for appointment or otherwise meet the charter requirements.
Yes, I believe my skills. I'm gonna start with that. The skills is simple. My experience and being a leader on a department, and then my educational background. And I also, received a what we call CLE, certified law enforcement executive. So I'm not only have I had the experience, and the training, I've done it. I've been there. I reviewed officers. I've investigated incidents. And basically anything that has to do with law enforcement, from citizens to complaints to hiring and removal of officers. I've been in that mix somewhere in some part of my career. Now, why I want to do, I've been a citizen of Cleveland all my life, other than when I left to go away to college. So it matters to me what happens in this city. It matters to me what our officers are doing and how they're doing them and how they're being trained, and how because it really does affect everybody in the community. When something bad happens, you can look across the country and see that one officer can do one bad thing, and for whatever reason, everybody wants to say all the officers are bad. And I mean, we all know that's not the case. But we have to make sure that our officers are trained. We have to make sure that they have good leadership and to be effective in working in our community. So I want to be part of that. I served in the community as the president of NOBLE, which is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Greater Cleveland chapter. I served my term with them, and that's what we did. We worked in the community. We worked to get officers training. We worked to recruit officers for departments that couldn't get minority officers. So, everything I have done has been community oriented outside of the job. And when I left it all, I kind of like, man, I'm missing something. And I told my fiance, I think I know what I'm missing. I said, I'm missing because I'm not serving. I've been serving all of my adult life, basically, and I just want to continue to serve.
No, thank you for that.
So I have a question for you. I'm sorry, Latanya, go ahead.
Oh, okay. My question for you is, what is your understanding of the consent decree and Charter 115?
I don't actually know the terms of the charter. I mean, the actual the language of it. But from my understanding is the whole consent decree came about because of at that time, our Attorney General was DeWine, I believe it was, and in his findings that the police department had a lot of things that were wrong, and from beginning from recruitment to training to supervising, it had a lot of pieces that needed to be taken care of, and basically weed out the bad apples of the department and get good leadership in there. So this you have to have good oversight. In at that time, CPD did not have good oversight, and so the dissent decree had to come in to find their findings and then establish a program that is basically is going to work to have that oversight and have someone who's not inside of the agency actually to with that oversight to make sure that our police officers are out here and they're being professional and that they can serve our public, serve our community the right way.
Good afternoon. I have a question for you, Mr. Jordan. So following up on that answer, can you talk a little bit more about what you feel? So two things. One thing is, what do you feel that the community needs right now from the police commission, and what do the police officers need from the police commission?
Well, the community, the community needs the officers. They need to figure out how to trust them. And, a lot of people forget the meaning of the badge that's on the officer's chest, and that is a symbol of public trust. And once the public and the community has lost the trust in the police department, then it's a fight. We can't even work together to solve our problems. We have so many the theory of the broken window syndrome here in the city of Cleveland, and nothing is getting done like it should get done. And the other part of that question you asked, could you repeat that part?
Sure. So I'm asking, if you were to be selected for the commission, what do you feel that the community needs from the commission itself, and what do police officers need from the commission itself?
Well, again, we're talking about trust across the board. Before I left being in law enforcement, one of the things you were talk to the other officers, and everybody was just scared of everything, and they didn't know that they can trust what the commission is doing and the review board is doing. They need to be able to trust and say, hey, am I going to get treated fairly? I may have messed up. Hopefully I didn't mess up that bad where I can't say sorry. Hopefully I didn't mess up that bad where I can't keep my job. But can I be treated fairly? And trust and fairness, I think, is what the community needs and the law enforcement side needs to draw everyone closer.
So thank you for your service, Commander Jordan. I want to ask you a question about the fact that you have extensive law enforcement experience and the fact that is necessarily going to cause you to be biased in possibly two different ways. You can be biased pro-police because that's your background and where you came from. You could also be biased anti-police because what you may have experienced or observed or seen in different various agencies. So talk to us a little bit about where you think your inherent bias lies and how you're going to manage that.
Well, because I have that experience and I don't have that bias. I mean, just because I worked in that area and worked in that field, I have an understanding. I have an understanding what it means to wear that badge and walk down our streets or drive down our streets in the city. I understand how an officer can find himself in a bad spot very quickly. But I also understand that you have to ask the question, how was he trained and how was he supervised? And what is the culture that he's working in inside that agency? So it's not, I don't consider it as a bias. I think that, I have a love for officers, absolutely. But I have a love for doing it the right way. And also on the other side, hey, I grew up in the city of Cleveland. I've seen the good and the bad of our community itself and how community members can put officers in a bad position to make a bad decision or make a decision that is not liked. So I don't look at it as a bias. I look at it as, hey, you're going to get somebody here who has a ton of experience, a ton of training, a ton of education, and to bring to the board to say, hey, yes, this was wrong, or yes, this was right. We might need to relook at something. So you want someone like me at your table.
Thank you.
So one of the things that, or the challenges that I think that come in this role is there's always the chance or possibility or inevitable. Yeah, probably inevitable that there will be disagreements, right? And there will be challenges, and you're going to have people on different sides of the spectrum, with respect to how to apply discipline, how to review policies, training, et cetera. So I'm curious to know if you can tell us a little bit more about how you handle or respond to disagreements, right? I mean, I know you talked about, or assuming your application talks about your service on Noble, or having been on boards before, but how do you move in those types of spaces? How do you handle disagreements among colleagues? How do you make sure that you're heard? How do you make sure that other people are heard? If you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's different because I was on those boards. I was with a group of people who were dedicated to get one thing done. It was sort of like I was asked a question one time. I played basketball at the University of Toledo. And so after the last game, they came right into my face. I'm a senior. It's over with for me. No NBA, happening for me, And they asked me, so what are you going to miss? And I said, I'm going to miss sitting or being with a group of people moving in the same direction. Did we fight? Oh, yeah. Did we get mad at each other? And oh, yeah, we did that. And so when you move on in life, you become more mature and things, but you still I still find myself in these groups. And we want to get to the same, we want the same results. And so you have to open your mind and be able to listen. My experience and your experience are going to be two different experiences. And then you're going to have your own thought pattern. I'm going to have my own thought pattern. But at the end of the day, what are we really trying to accomplish? So we have to work together to accomplish stuff.
Thank you for that, by the way. Is there, so the charter kind of outlines, and I think and in my last question I kind of talked a little bit about some of the duties and responsibilities of the commission. So I'm interested to know kind of where you see your strengths coming in at, right? In terms of the responsibilities that are outlined in the charter. What things excite you, right? What about this commission in particular makes you want to do this, right? So you talked about the service piece, and wanting to be engaged, and definitely appreciate that. So I guess I'm just, I want to dig a little bit deeper on that, and if you can expound on kind of what about this commission, what about the responsibility of this commission, do you see yourself being engaged and involved in?
Well, it's kind of one of those things where it's an intangible. So what I'm going to bring to you, or what it does for me, is intangible. So it's hard to really talk about. So when you've been in service for a long time and you've been working in the community and for the long time to solve different things, you bring an intangible amount of energy that that it's hard to put a name on it because it makes you feel good. See, when I serve somebody, when I'm doing what I do, I feel good. I feel better about myself. I feel like I am part of a big wheel, and I'm one of the spokes that I can help the wheel move. So the things that I bring to you into the board would be, I'm going to be a member who can say, yeah, I have an understanding of what took place here. I have an understanding, and that because all of the experiences that I've had so far, and that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a tangible and things as untangible experiences from me that some may not have, and some may not have been in those roles. I've been in those roles. I've been in those seats. So being in that seat, I have a true understanding of what could have happened. Why did something happen? Was it the wrong hire? Was it training? Was it bad leadership? What was it that put this officer in this position? So I'm able to look at those things, and being able to look at those things, I feel good about it because I've had those experiences. And the service piece, I'm telling you, I don't know how everyone else feels, but when you just want to do something, there's plenty of other things I could have did or want to, or I can go and do, but I just want to serve. I believe this is what I'm supposed to do.
No, I appreciate that. And last question I have, in your experience, have you been in positions where you've had to hold other officers accountable? And how have you gone about doing that?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh man, it's been, everything from investigation of sexual harassment to misconduct to poor attendance. You name it, I've probably have investigated it with officer involvement. Just not being professional, and just not doing their job. All of those things I have had the experience. I call them unfortunate experiences because you want grown people. That's the reason why it's an age, for being an officer, because you want an adult person to come in and come to work like they're supposed to, and follow the rules and regs, and just do their job, they were sworn to do. So I've had those experiences, and some were good and some you felt bad about, but then you have to make a decision.
I have one last question, if that's okay. What legacy are you looking to leave with the commission?
So you asking me to think about this with the end in sight, operate
No,
from
no,
the end,
no. Sometimes we start things with the idea of what we want to work on throughout. And so I'm just asking, not with the end in sight, but what does your legacy look like? When someone thinks of Commander Jordan on the commission, what do they think of?
Well, they're going to think about a lot of things. I mean, one of my most proudest moments, I got to talk about my athletic career. I'm sorry. I played basketball at then St. Joseph High School when it was all boys. And I came back after I went away and went to Toledo. I came back maybe, sometime during the next year, and was talking to the coach. And he says, I asked the players, who did they want to be like? I said, well, who did they say? He said, they said you. They wanted to be like you. I said, wow, that was an honor. I didn't know the guys actually felt that way. So thinking about this, if I had to leave, and I want someone to say, you know what? We missed his leadership. We missed his knowledge. We missed his understanding of the process. And man, we need to go get someone like Jordan, because he really got it. He had it. So that's what I would hope to leave. No time soon, though.
Thank you.
I know we're running up against the time. We started a few minutes late. I just want to ask really quickly. I really am impressed with your experience, and the perspective that you would bring to the commission. I think what I want to hear a little bit more about is sort of, one of the things that we're really tasked with is we have a lot of like literal physical documents to read. If you're selected, you'll be probably serving in at least one of the three, the police committees like accountability or training or I don't know, policy. They're heavy on reading. So can you talk a little bit about like sort of like how you would manage that load? There's a level of there are, you know, weekly meetings that we have. There's a monthly meeting that we have. I mean, there's every committee has to meet monthly. Sometimes they may meet more than once a month. The full commission meets every monthly. Sometimes we have special meetings. In addition to that, there's reading that has to be done. It's a lot of reading sometimes outside of committee. Then there's also, you know, just the typical serving on a board. You're going to have to check your emails regularly. They'll have to respond to those emails. You're going to have to, um, you know, sometimes call commissioners and have conversations. So I just want to just kind of get a sense of sort of like, you know, how comfortable with you with the types of reading that we have to do, and sort of how would you manage that workload with everything else you have going on?
Well, that's not an issue. It's called manage. Like you said it correctly. How would I manage this? You have to manage your time in anything in life, you know, in every part of your life. And if I'm going to be successful and in helping this board out, then I must make sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do. And you know, my role at in Noble, it was the same thing. You know, we had monthly meetings, and sometimes we had special committees, especially when we brought the national conference here in town and the regional conference here in town. So, you know, you're always on a Zoom call or doing something or reading something. Now, I'm happy to hear that you do have a lot to read, because we are talking about someone's livelihood. We are talking about somebody's life. And if it's just a two paragraph or one paragraph saying, hey, they did this, I got a problem with that. You know, so I'm hoping that there's a lot of information so that we can look through it and filter through it and see what the incident it really is. So yeah, I know how to manage my time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anything else from the panel? All right, so we are just about at time. I guess in closing, anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like us to know or consider with respect to your application and candidacy?
I don't think there's anything that that I didn't give you. I'm excited about the possibilities of getting back into service oriented, you know, part of my life that I want to feel. So I'm hoping that you guys really do take the time to consider me, and that and believe the words that I've said, that I'm capable and able to assist with the position.
Okay. Well, no, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to meet and talk with us. You know, so going forward, we're continuing through the interview process through today, through next week. And then at that time, when we're concluded, this group will ultimately convene and provide some recommendations to the mayor. Mayor Bibb will ultimately make the final decisions on who he wants to nominate for appointment and submit those names to City Council for approval. The expectation is that we will swear in new commissioners by December of this year. So just to give you an idea of the timetable that we're on. But if you do have any questions or concerns, or if anything comes up in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me directly. You know, and I'm happy to address those. But again, thank you for taking the time to meet with us, and we appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Looks like we lost Latanya. I'm not sure what happened there, but at any rate, our next interview is here, and we can keep it moving. So let's get more.
Good afternoon.
All right. Good afternoon. There you go.
Yeah, he didn't want to look at Judy Garland all afternoon.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. My name is Delonte Thomas. I'm the Chief Ethics Officer for the City of Cleveland. And Mayor Bibb has tasked me with overseeing the selection process for Community Police Commission appointment. And so, wanted to thank you for your interest. And before we get started, I'll ask that my co-panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Chris Violin. I am an assistant director here in the Department of Public Safety for the City of Cleveland.
Afternoon, my name is Dr. Lee Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Police Accountability Team.
And I'm John Adams, and I am one of the current commissioners serving as co-chair at the moment. So welcome.
Very nice to meet you all.
All right. So to get started, why don't I guess you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are interested in joining the Community Police Commission.
Well, I have recently moved back into the city a year ago and wanted to become more active with, within the city that I live. And this particular opportunity presented itself at a good time for me. I worked on the Issue 24 campaign and spent quite a lot of time in that endeavor. And this just seems like a natural next step for me personally. I love the city, and I think, whatever we can do to keep things working smoothly, for the lack of a better word, is it's a good goal.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. And I guess in just expanding on that, and I'm sorry, your last name is pronounced Garin?
Yes.
Okay.
Maura like Laura, Garin like Karen.
Got it. You said that a lot, huh?
Oh yes. Yeah, pretty much my whole life.
It just rolled off the tongue. I was like, oh yeah, that's her phrase. But so just kind of expounding on what you just mentioned. So if you can talk about any specific skills and life experiences that you have or expertise that you have that you feel would qualify you for appointment.
Well, what I bring to the table is what I believe is over 30 years of human resources experience. That includes labor relations, employee relations, investigations. Oh, that's to name a few things. It's a fairly complicated role, but I'm currently working in human resources, and it's something that I enjoy. I think that there are skills that I've learned that I can bring to the table, especially when it comes to labor relations, employee relations, maybe bring some ideas forward.
Okay. No, thank you.
Could you let us know a little bit about how you think you qualify for the position based upon the specific category you chose or categories that you chose when you made your application?
Well, that's a good question. As I went through the application, I felt pretty comfortable as far as being able to associate experiences, and if not direct experience, at least observation of things that are current with the police department, with the CPC as it stands right now. And I saw an opportunity to bring my skills to the table, like I said before. What the description of the role in the application was pretty clear and pretty straightforward. I just feel it's a good fit personally.
I appreciate your answer. I think I was more asking, there are criteria that the charter asks us to take into consideration with regards to different categories. I believe you may have chosen survivor of gun violence or family member survivor or killed by gun violence. And I was just wondering if you could expound upon that for us.
I can. And I'll be perfectly honest, I struggled. I'm a almost 70-year-old white lady, and my experience and my exposure to violence has been very limited. I, spent most of my adult life in the suburbs. Many moons ago, I was at a convenient food mart and was stuck in the middle of an armed robbery. I just had gone in for diapers, and my husband and 2 kids were out in the car waiting for me, and a gentleman came in and, well, he pulled out his gun and said to empty the registers. So I really just kind of stood there. I was surprised that the police weren't interested in talking to me or my description of the person. That was a surprise to me. And that's always kind of been a question in my mind, like, why not? Anyway, but that's really the most exposure I've had, other than becoming acquainted with a number of people who actually have really suffered from the results of gun violence. Being adjacent to that may not be close enough. I'm hoping it is.
Thank you for that. We're sorry for your trauma.
It's not something I think about very often, but it really was kind of life-changing.
I have a question, Maura. Can you talk a little bit about your commitment to police reform? I know you said that you were really involved in Issue 24. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like now that it has passed, it's become charter language, and in the consent decree, right? What are your efforts look like now?
Well, I think the efforts I can bring are, I have negotiation skills. I have skills where influence is needed, or a level head has come in handy in my career, very much so. And facilitation. I think that somewhere between the ambivalence on the part of the police and the part of the public to make this charter work, they can probably use a little bit of facilitation. That's just a assumption on my part, but most situations like this could use a little bit of a level head and some uh, facilitation skills.
Hi, Maura. I do have a question for you. Um, Thanks for your service and support of issue 24. But how will you balance the work of the commission with your daily activities?
Uh, I currently work full time. I am an HR business partner at a nonprofit here in Cleveland, and I have lots of time in the bank. I also work for an organization that values the city that they're. I work for Step Forward. We used to be CEOGC. We have 9 Head Start centers. We offer the HEAP program for folks who need utility assistance. And we also have a community operations where we have locations out in the community for folks who need counseling, need help with furniture, housing, etc. Their mission is to bring people out of poverty. I think that crime can be bred by poverty. I think that sometimes the existence or the subsistence of living in poverty can cause people to be unhappy and do things that they wouldn't do normally. Sorry, I took a little bit of a detour there. The role I have here, like I said, I think is something that helps me in pursuing this opportunity. I'm single. I live alone with my dog. I have time on my hands, and wanted to use that time in a good endeavor.
You talked a little bit about your HR experience and I'm curious to know, and I imagine you know probably have a number of things that you could share, but like how how do you navigate spaces where there's disagreement or where there's conflict, right? Like what's your style for dealing with those types of situations, whether that's among coworkers or you know, I'll stop there and let you answer.
No, among coworkers, since I represent the company, so to speak, my initial goal is to make sure that the organization is not going to go to HR jail. The things that I've used in the past come from my experience working for Kaiser Permanente. We had a partnership with our labor friends that worked quite well for a number of years. And we were able to, together, labor and management, we kind of walked through the process together, which was very helpful. Somewhere between, and I've used this saying before, somewhere between your view of things and my view of things is the reality of it. Because we all bring, our own perceptions to the conversation. So that's one of my often used examples.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. I was reaching for something else and lost it.
Uh,
I'm a little nervous.
Gotcha. All good. We're all friendly here. And I guess I'll jump back in again. Interested to know kind of, so the charter of the city, that derived from issue 24 includes a number of different duties and responsibilities for the commission. Interested to know kind of where you think, which of those duties and responsibilities do you think your strengths, can really help to advance the work of the commission?
Well, as I said earlier, I think that my negotiating skills, my facilitation skills, a long career of being able to size up a situation pretty quickly, has done a lot of good things for me in my career. I would think that at some point in the process, there would be opportunities for a meeting of the mind, so to speak. Being able to sit down across the table from someone and discuss our interest-based problems and try and sort them out, where we disagree, where we agree. A lot of times we don't spend enough time on the things we do agree with. And we sometimes find out that we're in violent agreement, and not really that far apart.
Okay, no, thank you. Anything else from the panel?
Yes, Maura, you mentioned, your work in HR and your experience working for the foundation. What experience do you have, if any, with community engagement? And would you be comfortable reaching out to knowledgeable people in the community for insight?
Yes. My direct community engagement, a lot of times I have to go out into the community for various job fairs, events that Step Forward wants to be or participate in, or at least allow folks to know who we are, what we do. I also have experience. There used to be an organization called the Euclid Women's Caucus. They used to be an issue-oriented group, didn't take any kind of political sides. And we were very active in the city of Euclid for a number of years. And there was a lot of community involvement, a lot of community engagement. We tried to be out there in front of things as much as possible. That's one of the direct engagement opportunities that comes to mind.
I'm gonna jump in. Hi, Maura. I wanted to know,
Hi.
so we'll have 13 commissioners on the commission. There's going to be a range of personality types and leadership styles, etc. So I guess, in thinking about that, it will be a diverse group of people in multiple ways. How do you kind of see the role that you will play in a group like that? Do you think you would be, are you someone who's more of like some people are like workers, right? And like they come into a group and these are going to be the people that you can rely on to get work done. And then some people are like very outspoken, right? And they will jump out there. They're the first to get out there. They're going to try to lead the group through in their own way. Some people are like consensus builders, right? Like they're very good listeners and they maybe don't say a lot, but when they actually speak, like it has impact on the group. So I'm just trying to figure out, because we want to have a group that's balanced, in
Of
terms of
course.
functioning within a role, because in our own way, we all play some role within a group. Um, how do you kind of see your role in a diverse, dynamic, passionate group of people?
Um, I while I'm more um candid about how I feel in my um current age, uh I'm a lot less inhibited, I guess, to say what I think. But I'm the one that listens and shares information if I think it's important or needs to be shared. I'm not um, the first two that you described doesn't fit me very well. Um, I will speak up if I believe something needs to be said. Uh, However, I am a little bit more um, comfortable kind of listening to everything and trying to see where uh, where things lay before I chime in. I will chime in though.
Thank you.
Mara, I have a quick question about the consent decree and the role of the commission. So the commission being involved with the consent decree and a lot of the work, how do you see the commission's role with let's see, how can I put this? I'm sorry. Um, Moving the decree forward.
Well, my assumption would be, and that could get me in trouble, but my assumption would be that um, each each commissioner or the group of commissioners uh, would need to know and understand the mechanics. I'm sure that in this first 2 years since uh, uh, the passing of the issue 24, I'm sure there's been a lot of, I'm guessing, growing pains as far as being able to um, assess the needs, prioritize, uh, create roles for folks that fit them the most or the best. Um, I There's so much to learn, I'm sure, that that would probably take up quite a bit of time and energy. But in order to move forward, folks would have to be able to understand and acknowledge what's happening now.
All right. Anything else from the panel?
No, Dr. Anderson stole my question.
All right. Anything that we didn't ask you that you think that you'd like to share or want us to consider?
No, I think that everything was covered pretty well. I hope I covered uh, enough. I really hope you'll consider me seriously for this role. I think that I can bring my talents, my expertise to the table. And I I love working in a diverse environment. I always have. I do better in an environment like that, where different people come with different opinions and different experiences. So I hope you consider me.
Right. Well, no, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you taking the time and your interest in joining. So what happens kind of going forward. So we're continuing through interviews today and through next week. This group will then convene and ultimately provide recommendations to Mayor Bibb, who will then ultimately make the final decision on who he wants to nominate for appointment. Those names will then be sent to Cleveland City Council for review and approval. And our expectation is that new commissioners will be sworn in December of this year. So that's kind of the timetable that we're on. But if
Okay.
you have any questions or concerns or issues or anything that comes up, feel free you can direct them, send those directly to me, and I'm happy to address those. But again, thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure meeting you, and we'll be in touch.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and it was a pleasure meeting all of you as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. I think our 4:30 is here. Let's get her in here. All right, so next we have Maya Kincaid. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
All right, welcome. So listen, thank you for taking the time to meet with us and for your interest in joining the Community Police Commission. We'll just start with some introductions and then we'll jump in. So Delonte Thomas, I serve as the Chief Ethics Officer for the city, and Mayor Bibb has tasked me with overseeing or as his liaison for the selection process for the Community Police Commission.
Hi, my name is Chris Byland. I am an Assistant Director in the Department of Public Safety here at City of Cleveland.
How are you? My name is Dr. Lee Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Police Accountability Team. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Adams. I am a current commissioner and co-chair of CPC.
Hi, my name is Latanya Goldsby, President of Black Lives Matter Cleveland, Citizens for a Safer Cleveland, directly impacted family member of Tamir Rice's family.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are interested in serving on the Community Police Commission?
Hi, everybody. I'm Maya Kincaid. I am a City of Cleveland resident, born and raised. I love the City of Cleveland for a multitude of reasons. But I grew up in between the communities of Collinwood, Glenville, and Huff. So I have had a lot of great experiences being a part of those communities and working through the development of those communities as a resident in them. My stepfather was a Cleveland police officer for 35 years. He actually won an award for being the longest, for being a police officer in one district for the longest amount of time over his career. So I think he spent 28 of his 35 years in one particular district, which was where I grew up. He worked in the 5th district. And so I have what I feel is a very deep-rooted connection to the city of Cleveland but also to what it looks like and feels like to encounter policing from both a civilian perspective, obviously as a civilian, but also from kind of an internal perspective, seeing a lot of police in and around my home, in my household, and kind of having an understanding for the job. And I guess the word I would use is maybe a criticism or different types of insights to the job based on the things that I know or the things that I've seen, that developed ideas and opinions for me, where there was room for growth or improvement or change, even among the police officers that I knew personally. So when I saw and understood what this commission did, I felt like my personal experience offered a lot of that kind of two-sided insight that could be valuable in a setting like this.
No, thank you for that. And just kind of building on that, if you can tell us a little bit about, skills or specific life experiences, or expertise that would qualify you for appointment or that meet some of the criteria set out in the charter.
So I personally went from being a retail banker, so finance, and focusing a lot of my interest in educating people in my community about the basics of finance and retail banking. So I started my career in that field. I grew from that field into the hospitality field. So all of my life and all of my work is in service to other people. I think that sometimes hospitality is overlooked in terms of the depth of service, but I think that COVID kind of shined a light on how important it is to us all to be able to go out and have experiences. And as a hospitality professional, I truly appreciate that, and being able to serve my community in that way. On the other hand, in terms of like my personal life, my stepfather was a Cleveland police officer. On the other hand, my father, my biological father, who I was also extremely close to, was an Army veteran and suffered from severe mental health conditions. He was bipolar, schizophrenic, later diagnosed with schizophrenia and manic depressive. And so these kind of compounding issues landed my father on multiple occasions in circumstances with law enforcement for multiple reasons, from everything from his depression led to alcoholism, and he, got a couple DUIs, all the way to us having to send police to be advocates for him as wellness checks, for things like wellness checks, because he was a veteran, spent time in the mental hospital. The VA has sent police to his home to what they call like pink slip him, to bring him into the mental health facility. And so we've had a wide array of encounters with the police, and like kind of having to navigate how those encounters would play out based on my father's mental capacity at the time. On the other hand, as I mentioned, I am, a young Black woman who grew up in the city of Cleveland, and I don't carry a badge. Although my stepfather was a police officer, I am a civilian. And so my experience with the police was often similar to a lot of my peers' experience with the police. I've had experiences that only ended the way that they did because I was able to articulate that my father was a Cleveland police officer. And that obviously shifted the outcome of the circumstances. And I was fortunate for that in those times. And, I think there is, how do I put this? There is, in any situation, right, there's always, everybody is always looking for, one side or the other, and the saying is there's three sides to every story, your side, their side, and the truth. And there are obviously circumstances under which policing, and we've seen them, where policing takes the wrong approach or the wrong turn. There are other circumstances under which the police are simply attempting to do their best with the tools that they have and the circumstances that they're in. And sometimes those things are also met with obstacles that obviously they're dealing with the public, they're dealing with people. What always kind of struck me and stood out to me was how drastically different those things would be once it was disclosed that my father was a police officer. And that always kind of bothered me, that I felt like, well, if the thought is in your mind that you can no longer justify treating someone a certain way or doing a certain thing because you know that now the oversight is on you, or that one of your colleagues could potentially be involved, then maybe your behavior wasn't appropriate before that realization was made. And that was another thing that very much interested me about the work that this commission does. So, I mean, I guess to answer your question, sorry, it was long-winded, but I think that my overall life experience equips me to join this commission, would make me a valuable asset to the commission. But as I mentioned before, I think that my insight into the I want to say inner workings, but some of the nuances of policing and the way that I understand them because I've experienced them on multiple different levels, I think also gives me a good bridge.
Okay. No, thank you.
Can you describe for us your understanding of how Charter Section 115, which establishes the authorities of the CPC, and the federal consent decree, how they work together and how they support each other?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, well, so based on what I read, right, the decree was created out of, how do I put this, a necessity for oversight based on the Department of Justice determining that there was an increased amount of, I don't want to, excessive force maybe would be the best term for it. I don't want to say police brutality. That's not the word I intend to use, but excessive force in policing in Cleveland. And so this commission works hand in hand to involve the understanding, needs, and voice of actual civilians and community members in the process of evaluating those circumstances or creating like policy to adjust how police and civilians, I guess, essentially interact or, coexist for the betterment of the community versus, dissension. So creating adversaries or creating advocacy versus adversary would be the way that I understand it.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm very interested in your take on policing police and community relationships as you've seen it grow over time, right? Based on your experience as the daughter of a law enforcement officer. Like you say, you understand a lot of the nuances. But how have you seen the relationship between the community and the police grow over time? What has it looked like over time to you?
So a couple of things that I think I noticed immediately between my, childhood or, late teens and now is that there are a lot less police. It feels like. I feel like I see a lot less police presence in my community. And I can't say directly anymore. Unfortunately, my stepfather, and my father have both passed away. So my relationship to that is not as close as it was, although I do still have, relationships with retired police officers, et cetera. But it's not nearly as close as it was at that time. But I see a lot less police presence in my community. So, for example, when I was younger, I could like sit at my parents' house at East 66 and Huff and sit on the steps, and I would see police throughout the day very consistently, just driving through my neighborhood. There is a far cry less of that. But what I have also noticed, there are a lot younger police officers than I remember, which I do think changes the relationship, especially as it relates to Black and Brown communities, which are the only ones that I can speak to because that is where I grew up. I think that seeing the presence that does exist, being younger police that are often minorities, people of color, women. I've seen more women as police than I've ever seen in my life. Probably in the last 10 years, I've seen more women becoming police. And I think that those things have changed some of the approach that the police kind of come with when they're addressing the community now, at least in my neighborhood. I think that for Ward 7 in particular, at least in my experience, there are genuine feelings of community policing. I mean, I grew up with who was the chief of police living right down the street from me at East 71st. A lot of my community were police that moved into the city and chose Ward 7 as where they would move because of the progression in the area, the new developments. Like my parents built a house in that area. So I think there has been a great deal of growth and a great deal of like decrease. And so I think the two things have kind of come together and caused the shift. And I guess also that depends on how you measure growth, right? Because change doesn't always mean growth. Because I'm very active in my particular community. I've talked to a lot of my neighbors. And of course, there's the overall feeling that because there are less police, when you call the police, when you feel that you actually need police present, there's a gap, there's a time frame, a larger time frame that it'll take the police to arrive, in an emergency or what you feel is an emergency. And quite frankly, people are always going to be extremely critical of the police. It's a big job. It's an important job, and it has so much impact on the community. People do feel the right to, and rightfully so, to be critical of the police. I think that the way the police are taking that criticism has grown from what I see. I see that the way criticism is being received to the police department overall is definitely changing. It doesn't feel as much like the community against the police or the police against the community. I think there is a great deal of an attempt to bridge those things to say, well, these police are a part of this community. So, it's kind of hard to separate the two things. And that also makes a difference in the way that people make decisions in their mindset around policing or being policed.
Hi, Miss Kincaid. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Can you tell me what's your understanding of civilian oversight of police?
So I would like to think that it would be a matter of reviewing anything from policies to individual circumstances from a civilian point of view and being a part of the process to determine if these things are working or if something is just, legal, or community centric as it relates to the police.
Earlier you talked a little bit about kind of some community impact. Interested to know, what experience do you have with community engagement and if appointed, how might you rely on community for insight to kind of help you in this role?
So I am very active in my community, in the community I feel like I grew up in, which is Ward 7. I'm an active member of Midtown. I'm still reconciling my feelings about, Midtown versus Huff, but, we discussed that a lot in the community meetings. I think that I would, as I do now, leverage my community to be as involved as possible with educating themselves, arming themselves with, understanding what is actually happening. I think that one of the things that I focus on most when talking to my community or being a part of my community is understanding the facts of circumstances versus the feelings, versus how those circumstances may have made you feel. And sometimes those things are conflated, and especially in community activism, as it comes to us as a community dealing with any level of government or official city processes or policies. I think that what we're overcoming, especially in the Huff neighborhood, what we've been overcoming for years, is the idea that we deserve more support from the city of Cleveland. And while I do agree with that, I also urge a lot of the people in my community to understand that none of these things can be done overnight, that there are processes, there are policies, there are things that we have to do to continue to drive things forward in the way that we want to see them, and that we have to be consistent. I think that my involvement with this commission, I would leverage the exact same mindset, that while we want to see things change, sometimes, as I mentioned before, change is not always growth, and growth is always gradual. Turning something, completely in the opposite direction isn't necessarily making it grow. It may look different, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. And so I focus a lot of my attention on that piece of, and I use the term of like bridging a lot. I think that oftentimes when you have different ideas about things or different mindsets, the thing between those, often Lake Erie is between people and their different mindsets. And like, we have to put a bridge there to say like, okay, while this school of thought is understandable and this school of thought is understandable, it's based on totally different circumstances or experiences, right? There's gotta be somewhere in the middle that we understand each other. And that's typically my focus with community, is like bridging those ideas.
So I'm going to build off that a little bit. First, two-part question. First part is, what is your current impression of the CPC as it's been doing its work? And two, the follow-up to that is, you have 13 commissioners who are all super well-intentioned, attempting to get things done, driven type A personalities who oftentimes conflict, but for the right reasons. How do you see yourself fitting into that mix?
So if I'm being completely honest, I am not extremely well versed on the actual work that has been done. I've seen things, I've seen video, I've seen, things that have been circulated. And some of it has been a little intimidating in the fact that it seemed a little dysfunctional sometimes. I've seen conflict and I've heard about conflict. I can't speak directly to policy that I've seen the commission successfully enforce necessarily. I would assume that some of the changes that I spoke to earlier would be a result potentially of the work of, the crafted work of this commission. But that is something I'm willing to obviously do more research on and learn more about what exactly has been affected because of this commission. Where I see myself fitting into the commission, honestly, is exactly what I said. I like to think of myself as a person who can understand multiple points of view. I think that sometimes that's our biggest obstacle, is that we have a fixed mind about our point of view. And because someone else's point of view conflicts with that, we feel that it would make ours untrue. And that is not true. Multiple things are true at one time, all the time. And so I think that circumstances like these often need people who are very strong in their convictions, yes, but also have a mind for understanding why other people are also strong in their convictions and figuring out what that middle ground of understanding is. Oftentimes, opposite schools of thought still have, as you mentioned, like the same positive intent or the same goal in mind. We just have different routes to getting there, or different understandings about why these things are occurring. And I like to think that I am genuinely a person who seeks to understand, not to judge or to necessarily criticize, but to understand and then create solutions. It's like, okay, we started on different schools of thought. We understand each other. What do we do moving forward? How do we solve this or create this bridge so that when two other people from different schools of thought of similar nature come here, we have a formula for understanding this.
One more question for me. Can you talk to us a little bit about your capacity to how you may be able to manage biases, right? I mean, the commission will be dealing with hot button issues, all the time, right? Whether that's to what you mentioned earlier, reviewing specific incidents that have occurred, or reviewing a policy, or or administering grants, or a number of different things, right? And a lot of these things, or things that may come up, may hit close to home, right? And
Right.
So I'm interested to know kind of your take or your ability to be able to withhold judgment, or to manage your biases that you will inevitably have, to be able to act in the best interest of the commission, and to be fair to both community but also to the officers.
Mm-hmm. So I think it goes back to what I said before, understanding multiple schools of thought. So to be self-aware is, as you said, to acknowledge that I have bias. Everyone does. It's, it is natural. Being able to dismiss your bias and assess facts and the circumstances, and to also kind of put yourself in the mind of and in the shoes of the other person, and some of the, I guess, anticipated biases that person may have. I think when we get to know circumstances or situations, we like to assume that we know how the other person was thinking or feeling. And those assumptions can be dangerous. But again, if we can assess facts, we can then attach more realistic ideas to, to give an example, to say something happens between an officer and a person, and a lot of times, right, to immediately jump to the idea that, oh, he lashed out at this person because they were Black. But if we assess the facts of the circumstances, well, what we didn't know was that this officer had an emergency room, was in the emergency room last night with, another person that he had to pick up, and ended up being there, and then worked his 12-hour shift, and he was just tired. And so his lashing out at this person didn't actually have anything to do with her being Black. Doesn't make him lashing out okay, but it changes the scope of, the reasoning changes, right? He didn't lash out because she's Black. He lashed out because he was tired. And so when we can realistically assess some of those things, right? Removing our immediate bias as a Black woman. If I see a police officer yell at a Black woman, right? My natural instinct is, oh, he's only talking to her like that because she's Black. But I may not know the circumstances that occurred prior to that, what either one of these people experienced prior to that. And as I mentioned before, we have a natural degree to criticize law enforcement. Because there is a standard, right, that we expect law enforcement to be the absolute best among us. Sometimes, though, law enforcement fails in that regard because they are also just people, and assessing the people and the circumstances outside of our biases. I think that, I mean, and in my line of work, and it may not occur to people, but in my line of work, being in hospitality, I have to do that all the time, very consistently. Dealing with the public in any way, I think that anybody here deals with the public. We have to do that in our everyday lives. Some people are better at it than others. I like to think that I'm relatively good at it.
Thank you for that. Anything else from the panel? Dr. Adams, Latanya, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have one question. We talked about the consent decree. We talked about Charter 115. We talked about the work of the commission and those mandates. How would you balance the work of the commission with your daily activities?
I would like to say that I would balance them like I do everything else. I work full time. I am a mother. You probably hear my 19-month-old in the background. My apologies, everyone. They're calm 1 minute and the next minute it's a hurricane. But I mean, honestly, I would prioritize it as I do anything else, right? Based on the needs of the commission and what it requires of me. I'm sure there will be times where it requires more of my time than others, based on what we're reviewing or overseeing. And I would make that very important and make it a priority.
Can I just follow up with that question from Latanya? So I guess my question is, I'm gonna because I worked in hospitality. So, when I was in college, in graduate school, so I understand that it's a underappreciated but a demanding field. Oftentimes schedules are not consistent. They can it's kind of the belly of the beast. Like the industry is doing what the industry is doing, and so therefore, like it's kind of up and down sometimes. So I guess my question would be, with your position in the hospitality industry, would that allow you to come to meetings that are going to be in the evenings, full commission meeting Wednesday? Right now we're meeting Wednesdays. It could change based on the schedules of the incoming commissioners, but we're going to meet in the evenings. You're going to have to sit on 2 committees. Those are going to be evening meetings for 2 hours. There's going to be additional like reading and work assignments that you'll have to do. So I'm just trying to figure out if you can talk a little bit about like help us. I just want to be comfortable, and I want you to be aware of like what the actual schedule is like. I know we talked about in the application a certain amount of hours that are going to be expected to be worked every week, but some of those hours are not flexible. They have to be committed in the evening. So I was wondering if you can just talk a little bit about the scheduling and how that would work, being in the hospitality industry, because I said, as a person who worked in the hospitality industry, I know my schedule could be all over the place. 1 week I'm available, 1 week I'm not. So can you just talk about that a little bit?
Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. Yes, certainly. And I really appreciate that, actually, that understanding of the time demand. So I am very fortunate in my role that I have worked my way to, as you would probably know, in the hospitality industry, probably the worst position is management. But I am a leader in my industry now. And so what that does allow me is a lot of flexibility in how I can make my schedule. And I do work for a company that is extremely corporate. So our hours are set. So it doesn't have, some of those, nuances of like, oh, it can be this, it can be that. And I work for RH. It recently came to Cleveland in March. But they are extremely prescriptive and very, very corporate, and we have very set hours. So once the demands are established, and once those meeting dates are established, I can absolutely build my schedule around those needs. And I mean, obviously, I would be lying if I said that there wouldn't be a potential where conflict would occur. But as long as there is some, level of flexibility on the end of the commission to say, well, this did come up, and am I able to join this meeting via Zoom or et cetera? As long as that communication is able to happen, I don't think that the schedule would be an issue for me.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. We're a few minutes over now, but anything that we did not ask you that you want us to know or consider with your application or candidacy? Or just kind of final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say that I would find it, an honor and very interesting to join this commission. I think that I would be a good addition. And I am, as I mentioned, I love the city of Cleveland. I think that among, a lot of my peers, I see so much growth potential in the city of Cleveland for so many different reasons. And I would love to see so many things come to fruition here. And I would be lying if, one of my biases didn't come to light to say, especially for communities and people of color. And I think that a lot of that growth potential and the things that can change lives here do come down to something as major as policing, as how these communities are policed and the relationship between law enforcement and the communities. And I think that it's so important. It's such an important part of our society. It's not going away. And so the greatest thing that we can do is be advocates for our communities in regard to law and helping people understand how to appropriately deal with and make a part of their lives in a healthy way, law enforcement. Because, everybody complains about them when they're getting pulled over, but everybody's looking for them if someone breaks in your house, so it's a necessary part of our community and our society. So if I could be in any way a part of bridging that gap, I would be honored to do so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your interest. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. We're continuing through interviews. We have actually one more today, but then we have some more next week. And then we'll convene. This group will ultimately make recommendations to Mayor Bibb, who will then ultimately make the final decision. And at that point, submit nominations to City Council for review and approval. And our expectation is that we'll be able to swear in new commissioners by December of this year. And so that's kind of the timetable that we're on. But if there's any questions or concerns or anything that comes up, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to answer those. But that said, again, just want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
All right. One last one today. Like she's here. Hey, good afternoon. I think you're muted.
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Hey, doing well. How are you? And I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your name? I didn't want to butcher it.
It's Narcia.
Narcia. Okay. That's what I assumed. Well, no, thank you for taking time to meet with us and for your interest in joining the Community Police Commission. I'm Delonte Thomas. I serve as the Chief Ethics Officer for the city, and Mayor Bibb has tasked me with overseeing the process for selecting new police commissioners. So as you know, we will have 9 vacancies come December. And so this is So this is kind of the first step in the process. And so before we get started, I'll ask each of my panel or co-panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in.
Hi, my name is Chris Vyland. I am an assistant director in the Department of Public Safety here with the City of Cleveland.
It's nice to meet you, Chris.
Hi, Narcia. My name is Dr. Lee Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Police Accountability Team.
Good evening, Doctor.
Hi, I'm John Adams. I am a current commissioner and a co-chair at the moment.
How you doing, John?
Thank you. I'm all right. I'm here.
That's good.
Hi, Ms. Jones. My name is Latanya Goldsby, President of Black Lives Matter Cleveland, Citizens for a Safer Cleveland, and directly impacted family member.
How you doing, Latanya?
Yeah, so why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and specifically why you are interested in serving on the Community Police Commission.
Well, I was a dispatcher and I've always wanted to be a first responder and helping with the city. I went to school in 2019 and I got my dispatcher certificate for public safety and transportation. I always knew I wanted to be a first responder, but I did get pregnant with my first child. So I wasn't able to be a firefighter like I wanted to be. But being a voice for the people would be very influential in my life. I have the experience of working with officers and knowing the background and just being involved in the community, not just being a dispatcher, but also being involved with the community and doing outside activities such as skating with the children in the city of East Cleveland and going to fundraisers as well. So I just want to make sure that the community, the civilians and the police are one and united so that the community can be great together.
I appreciate that. And I guess just to ask you to expand on that a little bit, can you tell us about any skills, life experiences, expertise that you can speak to that demonstrate or qualify you for appointment?
Well, I was with the city of East Cleveland and we had multiple calls dealing with the people in the city. They were not always pleasant with the officers. It was always a difference between the two. Sometimes, like Maya said formerly, when they wanted police to be there, they were always willing to call if they needed for someone breaking into their home or someone breaking into their vehicle. Then they would need police assistance. But if they were doing a random stop or pulling someone over because their tickets were expired or plates were expired, then it was an issue. I also had to deal with the community when they were in distress. So it was a grandmother on the phone and she had her child, her 6-year-old grandson, and he was burned badly on the whole right side of his body. So I had to make sure that I remained calm and assist and send police over to the area as well as firefighters and EMS to respond to the child. Not only did I have to send them, I sent them over there, but I had to stay on the line and make sure that the grandmother was well enough to make sure that the child was stable enough to be assisted and get to the hospital safely. Dealing with someone under pressure like that it can be overwhelming to some, but I'm here to help the people in the city, and not just the people, but make sure that the officers are safely able to access the people and help them with their situations. Reading over the duties of this job role, I seen in the voters finding, I seen that it said the need to significantly strengthen the civilians' oversight of the police role and make them more accountable to strengthen the relationship with the civilians and the officers. And that's what I want to do. I want to play a large role in helping the civilians and the officers come together as one, not just so that not as much conflict, just so that people can feel safe when the officers are there, not feeling in trouble or in need of hiding, but just so that they can feel safe and come together to find the actual bad people, the actual criminals out there.
No, thank you for that.
No problem.
So one of the things that the commission is going to be doing is reviewing discipline of police officers. And we all have our own biases, and sometimes those biases may be pro-police because you were involved in supporting police in your past career. It could also be anti-police because you've seen how some police officers can and do operate perhaps with misconduct. So if you would describe for us a little bit about how you plan on keeping your biases or how you plan on managing your biases while you serve in this role on the commission.
Well, really working as a first responder, I am completely non-biased to all situations. You have to understand that officers are still people, and that's what civilians fail to realize. They don't really fully understand. They just feel like they're out to attack them and out to arrest them and convict them of their wrongdoing. But when you explain a situation of an actual daily life of an officer working a 12-hour shift, and not just working a 12-hour shift, sometimes being attacked, being shot at, being harassed, being spit on. So people don't understand. I'm not just coming here to hurt you or harm you. I'm coming here to help you and make sure that the situation is safe and make sure that you and the people around you aren't harmed. So I want the civilians to understand the role of an officer. And if the officer could open up their minds and put themselves in the civilian shoes, because they're still people as well, just to understand each other's roles, then that will create more of an equality towards the civilians and the officers. And that automatically makes me non-biased because I understand each role. Being in the dispatcher room, sometimes civilians can be frustrating, and sometimes they can give you a hard time, even when you're just there to help them. But I know that they're seeking help, so I still send them. I don't deny. And I'm also a civilian as well. So sometimes I know that things can get frustrating or be agitating when you have someone cutting you off on the road, and then you have this officer asking you a whole bunch of questions about your plates or your titles or what happened in a situation. So I play both roles, so I really don't find myself being biased. I would gather information from both sides, from the civilian and from the officer, to make sure that whichever one is correct, that is on paper and documented.
Thank you.
No problem.
Ms. Jones, I have a quick question, just about how you see the city of Cleveland coming into compliance with the mandates of the consent decree, while also upholding the charter that you talked about, right? So they work hand in hand, but I'm curious as to how you see your work on the commission, making sure that both will be accomplished.
Well, I would try to engage in more activities between the police and civilians, not to see that it's always there when something's going wrong or when harm is being done. Sometimes I answer the phone as a dispatcher and you will get your regular people. Oh, hey, Janet, you need someone to come get John out of the house. I would want officers to not know fully all of the civilians in the city, but just get an understanding of who stays where and who stays there, not just by the aggression or the disturbances that are happening in the city, But just because I know that you're here, I want you to be safe. And I want to make sure that everybody on the street is safe. So I would just said something about fundraisers in the charts. I would make sure that I use the budget efficiently and effectively to use to like do skating with the children, play basketball, and with the children and the officers, or as well as back to school. Get the officers more involved with after school activities, and get them involved with back to school activities and helping and initiating the community and speaking with them, responding with them, or just patrolling the city and just speaking with them and conversating rather than being there to disturb them or harm them. That's the main thing I would do, the main goal, just to make sure that everyone is intertwined with each other and not just with the children, but with the adults as well.
Quick question. What do you see the role of the Community Police Commission as? Right? Like I guess like what's your understanding? And I guess you talked a little bit about kind of the, bridging the peace with community and community feeling safe, et cetera. But I guess more specifically in terms of duties and responsibilities, like how do you see the commission being able to create impact?
Well, the role of the commission is responsible for the community needs, making sure that the concerns or regards and regulations for the city, division of people in their community, long as the police are in the city and making sure that they're safe, making sure that there's no bias between the people and the police, making sure that officers are up to date on their paperwork and making sure that, also as well as identifying, maintaining organization within the paperwork of the officers and making sure that they're kept to date on their needs. But making sure mainly that officers and the community and the civilians are working together to make sure that the city is safe. They're out there to make sure that the city is safe. And I just want to make sure that the civilians understand that that's what they're doing. There's actual people, bad guys out here, criminals doing foul doing. And that's what I really didn't understand until I actually became a dispatcher, that there are really actual criminals shooting people, causing them deadly harm, mothers that are leaving their children in homes for weeks without being attended. And I wanted to make sure that civilians actually know that police are out here to make sure that they're out here to capture criminals.
In the application process, one of the things that the charter requires the city to do is to consider various different categories that commissioners can fall into. And in your application, you marked that you fell into the category of a gun violence survivor or a family member or person killed by gun violence. Can you explain a little bit of that to us?
Well, I tried to go into the application, but my brother, he was recently shot. He's not deceased, but he was shot twice. And the police actually assist him with getting transportation to the EMS because the crowd was so thick. They were not able to get to him. The EMS, the paramedics were not able to get to him. But the police carried him, 4 officers carried him to the EMS to make sure that he was safe and transported to the hospital effectively. And he's still here today. He's alive, so he's not gone. But I thank God for that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Ms. Jones. I do have a question for you. Can you tell me what's your understanding of civilian oversight of police?
Civilian oversight of of police is when law enforcement and civilians, it's when civilians review the government activities, such as police misconduct, and work on ways to improve the police in their role in the city. So if they're seeing activities such as police brutality, and officers antagonizing people based on bias, colors of their skin, if they're transgender, or if they're a different race. So the community or the civilians would notify a higher up, and then they would move towards as acting to make the officers or the community better. Just ways to improve the officers and their sites and making sure that they're non-biased towards civilians.
Thank you for that. My last question, we talked about the duties and responsibilities of the commission and what that entails. Can you tell me how you would balance the work of the commission with your daily activities?
Well, currently I work third shift. I am a mom during the day. But I'm still available during the day. I also have a very helpful tribe that helps me with my daughter. So if need be, I am always available to assist the people of and effectively play my roles and do my duties as a commissioner.
And kind of to follow up to that, or just as an FYI, so generally, at least right now, the commission has been meeting in the evenings, right? So they're having their once a month full commission meeting, as well as multiple subcommittee meetings, and those have all been happening like in the evening, in the 6 to 8 o'clock hours range of time. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, and whether or not that'll be a conflict. And obviously is not finite, right? I'm sure there's always opportunity for adjustment depending on who the commissioners are and what everyone's schedule is. But I do want to make sure that part is clear.
Yes. Again, I have a very helpful family. They help me with my daughter, and my job as now is working from 11 to 7 in the morning. So this job would not interfere with my daily schedule. I will be available to assist and help out at any time.
Cool. Another follow-up, kind of switching gears a little bit. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you handle and respond to disagreements, right? So maybe you can give us some examples of situations that you've been in, whether it's been, part of a team and there's been disagreement, and kind of how you go about dealing with those types of situations.
Okay. Well, working for the city of East Cleveland is kind of small and tight in the room, and it's only 2 dispatchers per shift. I did have a little bit of a conflict with the dispatcher, especially because sometimes it can be a drama or a very hostile environment in the room, and it's just us two and enclosed. I would talk to the person, establish and make sure that my words or my actions is not offensive or causing a problem to the person. I would speak to her and listen to her or him in the situation and find a common ground with the coworker, solve the root of the problem, and figure out a way that we both can be productive for the city or the company and work together with that fellow employee. If things tend to escalate, which I don't see them doing that, because I did have a situation. We had a disagreement, and I said, look, Nicole, that was her name, Nicole. I said, look, Nicole, we have to work here together. So whatever the issue is, just let me know what it is what you think that I'm doing wrong, and then we'll solve this problem together. And she was like, okay, Jones, because we go by last name. And she was just telling me what the things that I was doing that was causing her an issue. And I would apologize to her and let her know that we're in this together. We're here to help the city. So that's my only intention. And then we continue to work together for the remainder of her time working there.
Cool, thank you.
I just I have one question. I just want to know if you can talk about sort of there's going to be 13 commissioners. From what we've already seen for the first couple of years, there's probably going to be big personalities, some dynamic people, some opinionated people. I just want to know sort of like how do you think you would fit in a group like that? What type of like role do you think you would play? How do you think you would kind of move and operate with a dynamic group of 13 people, including yourself?
Well, working with communications, the main role for me is to listen. I will listen to everyone's opinion, and then I would input my own. But mainly listening would solve it and make sure that there's no conflict or no unbalance between everyone as a role in a commissioner. I would everyone is opinionated, and I completely understand. Sometimes they won't always be positive, but I would just make sure that I would listen to each and every individual's person's their thoughts and their ideas, and then I would add my own.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Anything else from the panel? All right, any questions for us, or is there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like us to know or consider?
Okay, nothing. I just wanted to say that I'm always willing to adapt and carry out the duties of the commissioner. If there's a change or something that goes wrong or something different, I'm able to adapt to any problems or situation. I'm determined, and I'm from the city of Cleveland. So I love the city, and I'm a civilian. And I want to make sure that officers are intertwined with the people, the civilians of the city, and that they're able to communicate and functionally work well and assist a non-violent and strengthen each other without doing that physically, but verbally. I'm also able to take criticism. So if I'm doing something wrong, I listen, and then I assess myself to fix the situation and do it correctly. So with that being said, I just want to make sure that the city is safe and that the civilians understand the roles of an officers, and that the officers understand that the civilians live here, they live in the city, and they want to make sure that the city is safe as well. Overall, our whole main goal is to make sure that the city is safer than what it is now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So hearing nothing else, want to thank you for your interest in the commission. Thank you for taking the time to meet and talk with us. So we have more interviews that we're doing next week. And then ultimately, this group will make some recommendations to Mayor Bibb. Mayor Bibb will then ultimately make the final decisions and submit names for appointment or nominations for appointment to City Council for review and approval. Our expectation is that new commissioners will be sworn in by December of this year. So that is the timetable that we are on. So if you have any questions or concerns or anything comes up, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to answer those questions for you.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, thank you again, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And it was great to meet you.
It was great to meet you guys too. You guys have a good one.
Thank you. So, bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody. Another day down. So I'll follow up with any other things or any other needs, but I think we have the meeting set for the mayor, but then also looks like we're on pace to get everything done next week. So cheers, onward, and I will see everybody on Monday.
Get some rest on Sunday, everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, Monday will be a marathon.
Have a good weekend, guys.
All right,
All right,
everybody.
2 cups of
Thanks.
coffee.
Bye.